The Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation is today launching the COVID-19 Country Report. Now, the launch is government's opportunity to reflect and report on the country's interventions and programs that were implemented in the managing of COVID-19. Now, SABC's reporter Nosipho Mncube is in Pretoria for us. So let's cross there to get more details on this particular report. Nosipho, good morning. And this, of course, a time that, South Africans and the world at large went through great consternation. But there's a lot to report back on. So it's over to you.
Very good morning to you too, Sakina. As you have mentioned, we are coming to you live from the National Research Foundation offices in Pretoria, where we do expect to hear a report coming from the first edition COVID-19 Country Report launch in collaboration with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, together with the Government Technical Advisory Centre, as well as the National Research Foundation. We will be hearing from the year 2020 to 2021 in March. The plans and the interventions put together by the government in its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But to speak to me more about what we will be hearing from today's report launch, I have with me the Deputy Director General of the department, and that is Mr. Godfrey Mashamba. Thank you very much, Mr. Godfrey, for joining us. Just speak to us about the process that your department, as well as the other stakeholders involved in this research project, went through in conducting their research. I understand that over 80 experts came together to assist with putting together this report.
Thank you and good morning to your viewers. We realized that what we are facing was very big, going to be very big, and we needed to put together a good set of information that will inform everybody and reflect on the collective experiences and individual experiences in the country. So we, as the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, partnered with the Government Technical Advisory Centre and the National Research Foundation, and we mobilized more than 80 researchers in the country to draw from the local research base to improve information about how to understand the dynamics of this disease that we're facing. You'd remember, in the beginning, nobody knew much about it. So we needed to have a South African story written by South Africans.
And how did you go about ensuring that balanced perspective of the government's response, as well as how it impacted the rest of the country across all sectors and backgrounds?
The research collated each chapter of this research that we're producing today with this report has been compiled by more than one researcher. There were groups of people that were working on each of the themes that we identified, and in doing that work they drew from a wide range of information, including media information, including interviews with key informants, including also what was happening around the world. And they also interviewed a cross-section of society, including the people that were actually directly involved in the processes of implementation and people that were experiencing the effects of the pandemics, the schools, the non-government institutions, you name them. It was very, very comprehensive.
So we know you will be expanding on what exactly comes out of that report and the research that was conducted between 2020 and 2021. But can you just briefly walk us through some of the key findings that you have made across the different sectors in the way in which the government responded to the pandemic and the effect that it's had on those different sectors?
Firstly, what comes out of this work is that an appreciation of the swift manner in which government actually acted. You remember at the time when this pandemic was declared a global pandemic of concern, a government of South Africa had already mobilized through the Department of Health, had already mobilized scientific research and the advisory structures to work on what can actually be done in terms of preparedness from the country's perspective. And then advisories were actually taking place in the background, and immediately when it was declared a pandemic, the government actually acted swiftly to introduce lockdowns and then all other manner of things in terms of interventions ensued from there. Because we knew that certain parts of the South African citizenship will be more affected than others. They are vulnerable more than others. So measures that were taken took into account that kind of considerations. That's why you find that there were outlays in terms of social relief programs that were introduced, support for businesses and employment, a range of them, and then measures to make sure that the economy itself stabilizes during those difficult times.
We understand that research is still underway. We know that this is the first edition of the report. So with the research conducted from then March 2021 and onwards, will there be any differences in the way in which you go about conducting that research, or will it take a similar format to what we've seen in the past?
What we appreciate is that because the first edition covers a period up to a point in time, up to March 2021, you would recall that at March 2021, the pandemic was still seriously in the country, still continuing. So we decided that let's put together a report based on information that has been collated up to that point, but then we continue using data collected over an extended period to work towards the second edition of this report, which is the work that is currently underway, to now look back and say, what we have actually covered in the first edition of this report, what can be supplemented in terms of more information, in terms of more analysis, also through a benefit of having more time to make some of the observations, such as the effect of the interventions that have been introduced.
So, Mr. Mashamba, what happens with the report now? Is it handed over to, I understand that Mr. Mondli Gungubele will be here as well, the Minister in the Presidency. Is it handed over to them? Or what takes place with this report now that you've concluded the first edition?
Yes, this being an official launch, obviously, the report has already been circulated through various structures. The pieces of information coming out of that report have actually also already fed into different structures who have used it to make certain decisions or make certain considerations in the repeal of laws here, in changing of certain policies, in introducing certain decisions. But today here as an official launch, the Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Gungubele, is going to officially launch the report. We are also going to make it public for everyone to be able to access it and use it as such. But in the main, we are targeting that more debates will come in terms of reflections on how a country can actually strengthen its capacity to respond to disasters of this nature, but also in terms of what other countries can learn from South Africa in this area.
Thank you very much. That is the Deputy Director General of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation speaking to us about the launch of this report, set to begin at 9 a.m. today. And as I mentioned, we will be speaking to Mr. Mondli Gungubele, who is the Minister in the Presidency, as to his thoughts and reflections on what they have seen in the report. But back to you in studio, Sakina.
Well, thank you so much, Nosipho. And, something that was with us, occupied our hearts, minds, thoughts, and our lives for so long. I think many South Africans would be interested to see exactly the details in that report.